growing up, I just felt a little different in the sense that I felt like I saw things differently. And you hear adults, they tell you, well, I'm an adult. And I would think, well, but you're not acting like. But when we are reacting from our nervous system, we're reacting from our ego, and therefore we're deciding from our ego. When we feel bad, we might turn to alcohol. We might turn to drugs. We might turn to fast food that doesn't nourish our body. If you think because everything around us is extremely fear-based. Don't go outside with your hair wet, you're going to catch a cold. Don't go outside without a jacket, you're going to get sick. Don't forget to put on your blinker or someone will hit you. We can go on and on. I used to say I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I love to make people laugh. And then, you know what the people around me said? You can't do that. It's 90 degrees and you're trying to sleep in the middle of the night and your air conditioner broke is a much different experience than you intentionally going out into the heat to go for a walk to change your nervous system.
In this episode, I have a conversation with Tiffany. Tiffany is a holistic healer dedicated to helping individuals align with their true selves and create meaningful connections. Her journey began with personal struggles, navigating divorce and the loss of control from within. Seeking healing, she explored transformative practices such as functional breathing, nutrition, TFT, and sidereal astrology, which became the foundation of her transformation. With a background in corporate sales, Tiffany combines practical experience with holistic insights to guide others on their path to self-discovery. Learning to clear her own traumas and embrace her strengths ignited her passion for helping others to do the same. Today, Tiffany is the founder of the Soul Circle Alliance, creator of the Inner Soul Map, and a co-author of an upcoming book. Her transformation from fear to love is a testament to the healing potential within us all. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the channel or like or comment on this episode. It supports us a lot, and also it makes it possible to spread the important information and messages of our guests into the wide world. Thank you very much and enjoy the episode. Welcome in the Awake Insights, Tiffany.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy and an honor to be here. So thank you.
Yeah. Healing is always an interesting topic. We had already a few guests here in the previous shows of the Awake Insights. And every journey is very unique, and everybody has different experiences. And I think it could be very interesting to hear where you are coming from, what your healing journey actually was, and how you became the person that you are today. So maybe it's a good one to start, like, okay, what was like a pivotal moment in your life to become really a healer?
Yeah. And thank you so much for that question, because you're right. It does speak to so much, right? And we can identify more with it when we hear what other people have been through. I just was at a retreat and I joked with the women. I said, you're not going to be healed by the time I'm done. Don't worry. Right. Because we often think that it's like this place that we get to, and it's not. It's a continuous journey and an evolution. And so, even growing up, I just felt a little different in the sense that I felt like I saw things differently. And, you hear adults, they tell you, well, I'm an adult. And I would think, well, but you're not acting like one. But I didn't have the words or the language for it, right, at such a young age.
Yeah.
And then through, my own inner evolution, there was a couple of really pinnacle moments. I mean, I think one of them was like after high school, and recognizing that now I do have that autonomy to choose my life, and, probably about 6 years later, I bought a house and really just, felt safety and security in all of those ways. And of course, years later, you realize, well, the safety and security isn't within the house, within the home, right? It's within me. And so, my father had passed away back in 2011, which was another whole journey within, and to really discover who I was inside. And, I remember one of the things that my father told me, on the, proverbial deathbed was, find love. And I took that in a different direction. I thought he meant find a person to love. Right. And so I did that. And I got married, and 7 years later, subsequently, there's a divorce.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's not what he meant. Oh, that's not me then, right? And so
Yeah.
really just embracing, after my divorce, I have a daughter now and she's 2, and just looking around and thinking to myself, "Well, who is that person that showed up there? And how do I
Yeah.
not let her show up again?" And that really was the largest, chasm, within my life, and looking around and thinking, I don't really have the control that I thought I had because I'm seeking it
Mhm.
from without, but it's truly within. Again, I didn't have that
Mhm.
language for it at the time, but that was the journey. And so, I started very simply with, well, breathing exercises because I can't even calm myself down. So, how can I move forward if I can't be calm or still? And so, I worked a lot with the breath and really like, trying to fill my tool bag with ways to bring my nervous system down so that I could have some semblance of clarity, in my life.
Yeah.
And then it all just kind of spiraled from there, in terms of immersing myself in books. I
Yeah.
remember Michael Singer was huge for me at the time, The
Mhm.
Untethered Soul, and really trying to understand what's up here and why is it so noisy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, getting into nutrition was so pivotal too, because so often I think we dismiss how important nutrition is to our mind, our body, and our soul. And it's really,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into this. And so trying to
Mhm.
find other ways to amplify my own vibration within. And then learning, the thought field therapy and learning how to transmute my own wounds. I mean, I am my biggest student, and even standing up and when I guide others, whether it's in a group or a one on one session, I get to say, I know that this works. Like, I
Mhm.
know it because I
Yeah.
have spent hours practicing and curating, this method within my own self so that I can be the best version of myself as as often as I can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
you just learn all of these really beautiful ways. And for me, it was just coming back home and realizing that the love we have within is the love that
Mhm.
extends without. And it's not the
Yeah.
other way around.
Yeah. 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 So you say that now you feel, since you're on that journey, that you have more control over your life, that you feel that freedom of taking your own decisions. How would you describe your state before that? Because I also experienced that myself. The more I learn about myself, the more I start to understand actually everything that happened before and how I felt back then and why I felt back then. Can you describe that for yourself?
It was really just a reactive state. Very reactive and people pleasing. People pleasing was my go-to, right? So
Mm,
if you're feeling bad, I can help you make you feel better, but at the same time I've dismissed myself throughout all of that. And that's been on replay throughout my life. It wasn't until, you know, I'm 42, so we're talking, just a year to 2 years ago where I started to understand it, to work it back and understand that
mm,
I am the most important person in my life. But it
mm.
really comes to, so often we'll have a situation and we react. And when we react, we're like, ooh, oops.
Yeah.
It's like you put your foot in your mouth. And when that perpetually happens, it made me understand within my own self, well, if I'm reacting in a way that doesn't serve me, then what's going on inside?
Yeah.
And how do I work that back so that more often than not, I'm responding to life and
Mm,
allowing that flow and releasing that resistance? Because so much of us, myself too, I wanted to control everything because I didn't
yeah.
have control inside. So we seek it, the dog isn't doing the right thing, or the kid's not doing the right thing, or the spouse isn't doing the right thing, right? Or the person in the car isn't doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so working that back and understanding that like it's from within, and it's
Mm,
how we show up in the world. And so having more love was really just such a way to even learn and understand. And I was just talking about this yesterday, right? Like sometimes we don't always feel 100% in our bodies. And how can we still find that unconditional love within when we're not feeling
mhm,
all that loving towards ourselves? And we
mhm.
can still do that. It just takes, what I call it's like muscle memory.
Yeah.
Like we have to
Yeah.
start small and just put in the reps. It really is very simple. It's not easy, but it is very
No.
simple.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And how did you start with that? How did you started with that? I hear you talking about reading books. Did you started developing kind of a practice for yourself? How consistent were you doing that, and for how long?
So for the first, if I were to break it down really, like the last 6.5 years, it started with the breath. And when I felt either out of control or getting out of control, I did my best to practice that breath work, to practice that calm within. And it didn't always work. And so then
Mm.
it's like, okay, so I need more, right? I need more in my tool bag, because the breath we're all doing it. We're doing it right now, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
But sometimes it's a little deeper than that. And also, how did it get so deep?
I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. As you probably have noticed, the Awake Insights podcast is more than just a place for great conversations. It's part of something bigger, the True Impact Club. The True Impact Club is a supportive community for anyone who feels called to share an important message or story and wants to reach a bigger audience. Whether you're looking to step onto stages, get featured on podcasts, or simply amplify your voice, the True Impact Club is here to help. They don't only support you in preparing for these opportunities, but also ensure you have a seamless follow-up system in place. That way, when people are inspired by your message, you can connect with them, build meaningful relationships, and even turn those connections into clients. If this resonates with you, or you want to find ways to make a bigger impact, you can find free resources on the website you can find here below. Thank you very much, and let's go back to the conversation.
And really
Mm-hmm.
even understanding, what am I trying to calm down inside? And I didn't have
Yeah.
that language to understand that these are wounds and traumas that we've collected over the years from our ancestors, from past life. And
Yeah.
so, there was a really influential stories, like I said, Michael Singer, he talks about, the mind and how it's not always us. And that can be very confusing, because wait, it's there. How is it not me? And
Mm-hmm.
really understanding all of these really spiritual concepts. And like, I'm reading The Untethered Soul again, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Right. Because so often we hear something and we are only hearing a piece of it. When we go
Yeah.
back and revisit it at a different space and place of time, well, then it's a
Yeah.
whole different experience. And I immersed myself in healing podcasts, and really just did my best to not only learn within, but also how can I curate this life that I want from without. And
Yeah.
nature was huge for me with that. I started backpacking, about 6 years ago, and it was also
Mm.
just a huge impetus to that self discovery,
Yeah.
because nature forces that in the most beautiful ways if you're open and
Mm.
ready to receive. And so, there's been a lot of, you know, pinnacle moments, and also, again, going back to filling that tool back, and then learning, the thought field therapy, and really understanding where these emotions come from and how they get trapped and stored. And most of us, when our nervous system is engaged, we've touched upon some wound, and it didn't just happen, right? We like to think, well, it just happened. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, it didn't. We're bumping up
Mm.
against something that's, might be a really core wound within.
Yeah.
And learning that energy, it can't be destroyed, but it can be
Mm-hmm.
transmuted. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you have those dense balls of energy, and then something kind of nudges up against it, and we kind of react. And so, how do we
Yeah.
take those wounds and just move the energy so that it doesn't
Yeah.
feel so hard, or, you know, so high, so that you can
Yeah.
experience something like, again, to my father's death. I did a lot of healing around that. So now I can talk about it. My voice doesn't waver. Will I still cry over him sometimes? Of course I will, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
stay. And that's the difference. I
Yeah.
just ride it, and really learning that emotions are energy. And the
Yeah.
more that we can see them and hold them, right, and honor them, and then say,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, right, and
Mm.
move past
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. 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 It's that processing, I think, these emotions that you experience, and they are quite tough and quite hard at the moment. If they are related to an event, and it's mostly like that, then you can, yeah, try to get rid of it, fight against it, fight against it, or what is it? Fight, flight, freeze,
Yeah.
um, push them away, and then they get stored somewhere in the body. And then it's a matter of what am I going to do with that? How long am I going to store them in my body? First, is am I conscious of that? And when you start that healing journey, then you become more conscious of that, and then it's a matter of yeah, um, going back to certain kind of moments where you experience those emotions and then find ways to process through them. And that's, I think, the moment where you then are going to experience it in a kind of different way. When something in your life triggers you, the trigger is still going to be there, but it's going to be softer and it's going to be in a different way. You're going to be more conscious about that. That's what I learned from it.
And I truly couldn't agree with you more. It is like that. You're
Mm.
not removing things from your life per se. You're just
No.
releasing that tension, right? That dense
Yeah.
energy towards it so that, you move through it quicker,
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. Exactly. That's and I had it in a previous session that someone said like we making from the wounds, we're making scars actually, and that's a really beautiful set. So the scar never goes away, but the wound is not there anymore. Because we are acting in a completely different way if we're acting out of our wounds or if we're acting out of our scars.
Mm.
And it's when we're acting out of the scars actually that we feel that passion and that drive to also um, express it more, express our experience more, but also that willingness to serve others with that. And that's also something that you have a lot because you made it your work out of it. Um, and you do that because you know how impactful that was in your own life, so you want to help others with that because it's also when we become more sensible, you also start to see other people around us suffering in a certain kind of way and see that they could use, and you can help them, right?
Hmm.
How do you experience that?
And that was also a journey as well, right? Because now I've learned, oh my goodness, I can help you, but it doesn't always mean they want my help or need my help,
No.
you know?
Yeah.
And so just, learning to be that model, and I think
Mm.
that's the best way to describe it is you can you can have that too. And just learning to model that for others. And, like that saying is when the student's ready, the teacher will arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I post so much, just about love and like coming back home. When you're ready, it doesn't have to be me. That's okay. But there
Yeah.
are ways that you get to come back home and
Yeah.
understand that you have it all within. I mean, we truly,
Mm.
truly do, but that was, going back to the people pleasing, right? Seeing people in my life and thinking, oh, I can help you. And then being like,
Mm.
well, what? Right. And so that was also another journey for me too, where I can offer. And then
Yeah.
that's it. Right. I just offer if I
Mm.
feel called to do so. And then, they're allowed their journey and it's not mine to own,
Yeah.
but I had to work a lot of that
Totally.
back too. And in a lot of this, we're constantly bumping up against, these wounds,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we can't heal them all because we haven't experienced life. And so until we've experienced life, how do we know what to do?
Yeah.
Right. And so I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that this
Mm-hmm.
was going to be a thing. I couldn't heal something that wasn't in front of me.
Yeah. Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know and then
Yeah.
realizing that we're all on our own journey and it's going to look different for everyone. I'm here as a
Yeah.
resource, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah.
love for you to
Yeah.
find that divine inner love within you, and there's other ways to do it too.
Yeah, totally. And you can just show what you stand for and share your experiences and be of an influence to others, inspire other people. But yeah, in a lot of cases, people are not just ready for this. They're not willing to listen, but we all hope that they take something out of it. And then in a certain moment in their life, then maybe that becomes more important for them. And then they're gonna think back like, hey, Tiffany, I remember her. You had a I was not really very listening very well, but there's some things are still in my mind about that actually, and actually she was right. So that's beautiful to know that, and that's how it works. Also, I experienced that myself. If I think back, like people that I've met in my life, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I'm like, yeah, that person, she was all about that, and she tried to explain me a lot of things about that, but I was not really very interested in that back in that time. But now I understand it. So yeah, that's really powerful, and that shows that the work and what you do, that it's so important to share that with as much people as possible. And that's why we are having this conversation, right? We want to share that with the whole world.
Exactly, exactly. And you never know, That's how I approach it, because I never know what message, whether it's mine or yours or another
Mm.
individual's, we don't know what message that person is receiving in that exact moment that goes, I get it now,
Yeah.
or I
Yeah.
see it now. And then that, is that invitation to move forward. And that's why these platforms are so important, when we can really
Yeah.
humanize them and say, oh no, I've been there too. Or at least some
Mm.
semblance of what it is that, because we're all collectively experiencing things. And to have what I've gone through in my life allows me to be that guide for others, because it
Yeah.
comes from a place of knowing. And that's the difference too. When we want to work with somebody, it's important for me to know that they know, not just
Yeah.
I think so, I guess,
Mm.
right? We
Mm.
know it, like from deeply rooted within us. And I think that that is just such a powerful place to be too, because it's going to amplify everything, you know?
Yeah. True. Just a quick note. I want to share something that might be valuable for those who are looking to grow their brand or their business. The True Impact Agency is a digital marketing team that supports you in building everything from marketing funnels, landing pages, to ad campaigns and custom websites. Their focus is equipping you with the right strategies and systems to elevate your business and presence. If that sounds interesting, visit True Impact Agency to learn more and book a free consultation call. It's a great opportunity to clarify your goals and take meaningful steps forward. And let's go back to the conversation. Yeah. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the traditional way of looking for support and help. And how do you see that today? And then the role that you play and others play actually in these processes and these healing journeys of other people. So it used to be, and it's still in a lot of cases like that. If people start to struggle in their life, a certain event happens. Yeah, it can be a loss of someone. It can be a burnout. It can be many things that people look for. Okay, I reached like a kind of a limit here. I cannot bear it anymore. I need support. I'm looking for help. So I'm going to look for a psychologist, a therapist. Um, how do you look at that today? Is that a good way for people to do that? Are they helpful? Can they really heal you, or is it support until a certain kind of level? And is there something that you can do that they can't do, or the other way around?
That's such a beautiful question, because we live in a world now, we're having this human experience. And so when we feel bad, what we know is, well, therapy, right? I'm
Hmm.
going to go talk to someone. And it's
Hmm.
a beautiful thing, because so often in in our world, in our life, who actually listens to us, you know? And so
Yeah.
you're sitting with your therapist and they are listening to you. Now, talk therapy is great. If that's where you're at, then of course, right? Then
Yeah.
embrace that, because you still can transform. What I
Hmm.
find is, when we connect more to the spiritual side, that spiritual essence within us, that's where the work happens a little quicker,
Okay.
because we're more connected to our higher self. When we're more
Hmm.
connected to our higher self, we're leaving that ego, we're not attaching so much to the ego. And so for
Yeah.
me, talk therapy can work very well with other components, but there needs to be more than one. And at least that's what I
Yeah.
found too, because I started with therapy. I saw my
Yeah.
therapist for a year. And what I noticed was, she often had an opinion about my life that didn't match how I was feeling. And so I was
Hmm.
less inclined to be vulnerable and open, looking back. And
Hmm.
that's when I thought, well, there has to be more, because I don't want to sit on this couch for the next 4 years talking about the same thing. And often what happens in therapy is, you go to your therapist
Hmm.
and you're talking about what happened within the last week. And so you're
Yeah.
not really making that dent, so to speak, in your wounds,
Yeah.
because we're focusing on all of the things that happened during the week. And the therapist is there to hold space. And so we, in learning and connecting more with your spirit side,
Yeah.
I feel it's we open up that door to mirror, right, within what's within, because
Hmm.
that's the projection of without. And if we don't if we don't embrace what's within first, then it's going to make that journey a little bit more difficult. And that's where people have more suffering, because they think, well, it didn't work,
Yeah.
or I'm not good enough, or,
Mm.
I'm broken because it didn't work. And what does work? What
Yeah.
does that mean? And have we talked
Mm.
about this? Well, we can tap into our intuition, when we can tap into our higher self, when we can
Mm.
connect more greatly with that, it's easier to understand who we are within, because it's always there. We just have to
Yeah.
remember, and it's that remembrance piece.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
as an energy healer, I know, I know that we can help release these wounds in ways with which talk therapy, I'm not saying it cannot.
Mm.
The effort might be very great and it might take a long time.
Yeah.
For instance, I grew up afraid of wind, which is kind of a funny thing to be afraid of. And,
Mm-hmm.
when it was windy, I got a sound machine as an adult because I couldn't understand what is with the wind. And it was at nighttime and wind. Well, then I became a backpacker and I was like, well, this doesn't work because it's windy. And so I
Yeah.
remember being in my hammock last year and still feeling it and thinking, no, 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 we're not going to continue to do this. And so in my hammock in the middle of nature, I wrote
Mm.
down all my little programs with wind, and I didn't stop until I was done with all of them. And then I
Mm.
went to sleep. And I forgot about that. And then back in August, so that was probably in June, in August, I was out and we were on top of a mountain and it was windy. And I did one of
Mm.
these. It worked because I
Mm-hmm.
then realized that I had zero issue with the wind. As a matter of fact, I found it to be beautiful and I welcomed it. And that was such a different experience that I had not had prior to.
Yeah.
And so I could have gone to my therapist and talked about that and talked about the wind and talked about the wind. But I was able to find that control within right in that moment and say, no more, no
Mm.
more. Somebody just asked me at the retreat, they said, I have a sound machine. I said, I have a sound machine too. It's not a bad thing, right? It's okay. We don't want to hear other people's noises and we want to, sleep. And she said, well, why did you get one? And I thought to myself, and I went, because of the wind. And she was like, what? And I'm like, well, quite literally because of the wind. That's why I got it. And so
Yeah.
I get to look back at these moments and see this transformation, you know, and
Mm.
see the
Mm.
power that we all have within us.
Mm-hmm.
We just have we just need the want, that desire, that love enough inside to say, I am enough. And how do I curate that life that I want from within?
Yeah. Yeah. That belief in yourself, that's a very important thing for
It
sure.
is.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more, because I'm not sure if everybody would understand what do you mean with higher self?
Great
What is your
question.
higher self?
So for me, right, when we talk about the higher self, that's that connection to our intuition. That's that connection to those feelings or images that we've had throughout our life, but we've
Mm.
probably dismissed because, whether through our parents, as children, you know, if you're around children, you understand that they have a connection that we don't, from years
Mhm.
of like the
Mhm.
traumas and the wounds, and children will speak to other people. Right. And we
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
they're weird or crazy or there's something wrong with them. And so, but
True.
that's their connection to their higher self. When we can sit with our intuition, and this is how one of the easiest ways I find to connect to that higher self is to ask yourself a very easy question. And when I say easy, something that's not very big, right? Like, what am I going to have for lunch? And
Mhm.
then that very first answer, that's what you do. That's that connection to that intuition. And that's how we continue to develop it, is by asking ourselves questions. Now, if you're in a life change right now and you're like, should I change my job? If you're not
Mm.
If you don't know that voice, that might not be the best place to start,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're going to have that doubt. And what we don't want is doubt, because that's
Mm.
that ego side of us, and the
Yeah.
ego wants to keep us safe. And that's really the difference I find, is when we're connected to our ego is very reactive. Our ego is dismissive. Our ego wants me to tell you that you're wrong and bad, but not me,
Mhm.
right? Our connection to our higher self is more curious. It has that intuition and it's not resisting. And so the
Yeah.
the one way that I find that I, guide to connecting with is asking yourself very simple questions. What sock do I want to wear today? Right? So that you
Mm.
can start to really know that that voice is there and that
Yeah.
it's ready for you. I was just yesterday at the retreat, this woman sat down with me and she's like, I'm really nervous about going home. And I said, okay, tell me more. She's like, well, I feel so, great here and I feel resilience. When I go home, I'm stepping back into my life.
Hmm.
And I said, and you can do that with all that you feel today. And she said, how? And I said, choose you. And I went through all the ways that we can do that. And it really starts with that knowing inside. I don't even call it a belief because a belief to me is something that might not necessarily be ours. That belief could be that I'm not good enough because our parents, and through no fault of their own, sometimes our parents, they're so well intended, right? That they don't
Hmm.
know that they're doing this. Just the same as
Mm.
I have no doubt that I've done this and will do it to my daughter. Do you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
because we're not them. And so,
Mm.
and I even said it to someone the other day and they said, no, my mom was very supportive. I said, I hear you. I said, but you go to your mom, you go running in and you're like, Mom, I can't wait to show you this, creation. And your mom says, oh, can't do that right now. And what does that little child go? I don't matter. I'm not good
Mm.
enough. Whatever program is in there. And
Yeah.
so we have to develop that connection, right? And this is what I said to the woman too. I said, whatever you're going back to is hard, no matter what, right? Your ego wants to keep you safe. It's still hard, you
Hmm.
know? And so you get to choose which voice to listen to. The intuition, that voice of your higher self, is the one that will guide you from your heart, whereas
Hmm.
the ego is going to guide you from the mind.
Mm.
And that's the best way that I can describe the higher self. It's more in the heart and not in the
Mm.
ego.
Mm. Yeah. But isn't it the case if you want to listen to the intuition or the gut feeling, is what they call it as well? Ask yourself a question, and the first thing that comes up comes from that place. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct, right? Because you before you said that the ego is very fast actually to give an answer as well, but it's not
Mm,
as fast as the intuition.
That's correct. The first voice that you're going to hear is going to be that intuition. The second voice, now I don't know when that second voice is going to come in, but that
Mm.
second voice is going to be that ego, the one that wants to keep you safe. So when you say, I'm going to jump off, into this, water, from a safe distance, I'm going to jump off into that water. And you say, yes. And then you step up to it and your ego goes, no, that looks too much. You shouldn't do that. That's dangerous. You shouldn't do that. No, we're all the ways that you shouldn't do that. Right.
Yeah.
But if you listen to that very first voice and connect back to it, you'll have your answer because your ego just
Yeah.
wants to keep you with what it knows. Whereas that other voice, that higher self, that intuition, that gut feeling, it's the same thing. Our body is always contracting and in expansion with anything that comes into our life: food,
Yeah.
conversation, people's energy. And the more that we can read that, again, that's how we connect. Your ego will keep you, your ego wants to keep you safe. So it's like, should I leave my job? I want to leave my job because I need to leave my job. And your ego says, well, what about vacation? Well, what are your kids going to do? What are they going to think of you? Why would you do that? That's really stupid. You shouldn't do that. Right.
Mm.
But that voice inside of you is still like, but I want to. And so it
Yeah.
becomes a back and forth. And more often we choose from the ego and we don't feel
Mm.
good inside because
Mm.
we haven't used that voice, that gut feeling, to your point, right? Because that is the intuition.
Yeah, it's a trust issue, I think, in a lot of cases. Something that comes up in my mind when you were explaining that is, I think, a good example for me at least. When you ski, for example, and you go on a jump, and then you have to just trust and be sure that you can do it, and just let yourself go. Because if you have a one single hesitation, then you're not going all in, and then you're gonna fall or something gonna happen along the way. But if you really trust, then you can do it. Then you just let yourself go, and it's gonna be fine. Maybe not always, but it's gonna be, depending on your skills and your experience, is gonna be pretty fine. And I think the challenge is really to trust that it's going to be fine, and that because it's a little uncertainty. It's that unknown is that unknown factor, right? You take a decision. Okay, my intuition says I can do it, so let's go. But yeah, and then the ego is, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you can do it. I'm not sure if you're ready. Um, yeah,
And I think
I
that's
don't
the
know.
difference of knowing versus believing something, right? Because when we know something, someone can't take that away from us. And we all have something inside that we know to be true, right? We all know something about ourselves. Like, I know I'm funny. I know
Mm,
I'm funny. It's not, you can't take that from me, right? And so
mm,
I know that to be true. And that's just a very simple example. We all have these knowings inside. And what we know, someone can't take from us because we have that faith to know that we're enough within it. And so if we can remember what it is that we know, then we can start to reestablish more deeper knowings in that faith. And what I always say is if you don't trust yourself, you already know it because you don't trust other people.
mm,
Everything that we say on the outside becomes a mirror to what we have inside. And so if I say I don't trust people, what I hear is I don't trust myself.
yeah.
The world isn't good. I hear I'm not good.
Mm,
Well, if they only did this, and I hear, well, that's you. And
mm,
so it's reflecting towards to us. And the best way to describe that is this victim mentality, right? And I say that with love and compassion. I too am the victim, unfortunately or fortunately. And
mm,
now when I do it, it becomes a great matter of curiosity and I get really happy, right? When I get to
yeah.
learn something about myself. But when we react to something, that is a wound, that is a trigger, that is our ego. When we
Yeah.
respond to something, that is the connection to our higher self. Because under
Yeah.
no circumstance am I going to meet you because I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to stay in my
Mm,
authenticity, in my heart space. And that is a reaction. Excuse me, that is the
yeah.
response. And so when
Response. Yeah.
we react, we become that victim. We have that victim
Yeah.
mentality. Well, everything is happening to me. In fact, it's happening around you. And the more
Mm-hmm.
that we can see it, it's like the best way to describe it too is in traffic, right? People always get very judgmental in the cars where somebody cuts them off and they think they know everything about that person, right?
Yeah.
Well, when a
Yeah.
person cuts you off, let's think about what you actually know about them, which is you don't,
Mm, no, nothing.
right? And so you were reacting to something from within. It had nothing to do
Yeah.
with that person cutting you off. If you say, well, they should have seen me, I hear, I'm not seen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see myself. I'm being disrespected. Well, how do you disrespect yourself?
Mm,
And that's if we can see life in those ways. And again, you know, simple, very easy little steps. I always like to say 1% better, not this all or nothing mentality, right?
mm,
1% better. Did you react to something today? Can you look back and get curious and find that wound? Because the more that we can do that, the more that we set that muscle memory and our intuition goes, I see you and I'm going to give you more.
mm, yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. And it took me some time to realize that and to discover it really, because yeah, also the ego is in the way there, and it doesn't want to admit, or you don't want to admit it, that that's the case, and that's what's happening. And once you start to accept that, and you go and really question all of these things, and be conscious about it, and you, yeah, that's really a confirmation every time. And then you start also seeing it with others. I see that with friends of me as well. Like if they express something, mostly people that I know already for some time, they express something, they say something, and then I know actually that it's about them because I
Mm-hmm.
know them.
Yep.
And it's so interesting to, and then, yeah, in a subtle way, you can just share that and express that that's something that you discover. But no, but it's really true. Yeah. It's really an interesting way of yeah, learning so much about yourself. Actually, just listen to yourself, how you react to external things that's come on your way. So yeah, really really nice. Can you share, because I know that you are skilled in very different modalities, that you tried a lot of things yourself. Maybe we don't have to go deep in all these kind of modalities, but I think maybe it's a good thing to share your experiences with all of that, what how they are different from the others, and how someone should start with something if they are, yeah, on that healing journey. And is there something that is maybe better for this kind of person or maybe for that kind of person? I don't know how you can say, is there something that's better for man and better for woman? I don't know. Does it depending on age? Does it depending on yeah, the things that you have experienced, your trauma? Is there something that's specific for a certain kind of trauma, for another kind of trauma? So a little bit an explanation about that.
Yeah, sure. And I don't know that there's a prescription per se to anyone. Do you know what I mean? Because I think we all just get to a point in our life at some point, I hope, right? That's the hopeful intention is that, you see yourself, and usually it takes something pretty big in our lives for us to say,
Hmm.
okay, something's not right, or something doesn't
Mm,
feel good around me. And,
mm,
for me, the start of my journey, I said it was breath work, but really in reality, it was nutrition, because my father
mm,
was diagnosed with a stage 4 glioblastoma, which is brain cancer. And it was then that I said, okay, I cannot control getting a brain tumor. But what can I do to perhaps prevent that within myself? And so I focused on my nutrition. I focused on getting plastic out of my life. I focused on drinking better water. I focused on, really nurturing my body. And within that, I said, oh, this is helping my mind. But I didn't have the words for it at the time. Do you know what I mean? Because
yeah.
we haven't experienced everything. And so going to the breath work allowed me to have that pause that
Mm,
I so desperately needed, so that I wasn't in this reactive state, so that I could
mm,
not put my foot in my mouth, not say things that were mean or unkind or weren't authentically expressing from myself. And so, the breath is someplace that we have on our person at all times.
mhm.
We always have the capacity to breathe slower, to breathe deeper, and to breathe out of our nose
Yeah.
for the most part, unless it's stuffy, right? And so it's about remembering that we are the ones inside, and to bring that calmness and that stillness within. And, you
Yeah.
might be listening here and you might, feel that wheel of anxiety and that wheel of stress. And it can be an invitation to breathe in and out, and only that. Just focus on that.
Mm,
And that can be enough to take our attention out of our mind. Because again, when our attention's in our mind, everything is bad, wrong, and out to get us. I know, because I used to think like this too. And guess what? Sometimes I still do. And when I do, at least I have these tools to say, Tiffany, that's the ego. Come on now, right?
mhm.
And so, the breath I use in practice all the time, and movement too. Movement, and I don't even want to say exercise, because
Mm,
everyone's definition of exercise is different, but movement is pretty
yeah.
standard. We're going to move our body. We're going to
Mhm.
find nature.
Yeah.
If we look around, nature is always thriving,
Mhm.
and you get to too.
Mm,
And the more time that we can spend in nature, the more beauty we find in our life, because
mm,
nature is beautiful in any
mm,
season, for any reason. There is something in nature that will stop you and think to
mm.
yourself, wow, that is so beautiful. The colors in the sky can do that. A simple blue hue in the sky can overcome you because
Totally.
you've taken your attention out of your mind. And I think that's really the game in all of this human game, is to
Mhm.
how quickly can we take our attention out of our mind to stop those thoughts and programs.
Yeah.
And so any of us can take on any of these at any time. And I don't think, like I said, that there's a prescription. It's a matter of being conscious enough to
Mhm.
choose, to recognize that you have a choice, to say to yourself, I'm going to meditate this morning, or I'm
Mm,
going to go for a walk, which is very intentional, instead of saying, I gotta, the alarm's going off. I gotta go for a walk, and then I gotta go let the dog out, and then I gotta go make my lunch. Of course, you're starting your day in a very anxious space.
Mm.
We need that stillness within and to fill
Yeah.
our cup, because that will help when these reactive instances come up for us to be in a more responsive space. And any of us can do these at any time. And now when we move forward into, more energy healing, that is whether taking a wound or a fear, because our ego is very fear based.
Mm.
And it's from these programs, right? And if you think about it, everything around us is extremely fear based. Don't go outside with your hair wet, you're going to catch a cold. Don't go outside without a jacket, you're
Mm.
going to get sick. Don't forget to put on your blinker or someone will hit you. We can go on, and it's very fear based. And that's
Yeah.
very egocentric.
Mm.
And so we have all of these fears inside. And in order for us to accept energy healing, we have to pause to
Mm.
know that we have these wounds, to
Mm.
know that they're there. And they have gotten us to where we are right now. And they don't serve us anymore. And that's
Mm.
something I often say in sessions. I say, let it go. It's not yours anymore. You don't own it. It doesn't own you.
Mm.
It helped you. And now you don't need it anymore. And so when
Mm.
we look at these wounds, fear is a very easy one to understand. I am afraid of the dark. Great. I can help you with that. Right? A lot of times we're not like so quick to go, I have a mom wound that's really deep. Can we work on that? And it's great when they do, but it's not always the case. Yesterday
Yeah.
during the retreat, these women were swapping stories of pain in their body.
Mm.
And finally I stood up and I said, I just want to offer you guys something. And I said, pain in your body is information to some emotional wound. And I described how
Mm.
the right side is the more masculine, the left is the feminine. And so some woman came up to me after and she's like, I never thought about that. I have all these pain. I started in my knee and it went to my hip and now it's in my jaw. She said, what do you
Mm.
think that is? I said, well, I would assume a mother wound, but I don't really know that much. And all of a sudden she went and her face overcame her. Like I just discovered something within her. And I didn't. She knew it all along.
Mm.
Right. And I was just receiving that from her.
Yeah.
And so when we know now, okay, I have some direction, now we can use energy healing, because I can't force energy healing on you. We already talked about that,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
We have to be ready, willing, and able to accept it and not go, well, this is not going to work. Even in the group
Mm.
that I ran, I was working and some woman said, no, I've never really been able to do this. And I knew that I wasn't able to help her because she wasn't able to receive in
Yeah.
that moment. Now, that doesn't mean forever. It just means right now. Maybe she wasn't feeling
Mm-hmm.
safe, right?
Exactly.
And so we have these moments in our lives. I also found diving into astrology was really impactful because
Mm-hmm.
we love to learn about ourselves. You're going to tell me about myself for the next hour? Okay, I'm all ears, right? And we want to learn about ourselves. And in astrology, there's all energies, and there's higher vibrating energies to every planet, sign, constellation, and there's lower vibrating energies. And so for me, I saw it as, well, how do I have, Mars as action and aggression, and it can be anger. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
not the only thing Mars represents. So how do I embrace more of the higher vibrational, aspects of the planet within my own chart? And what I found is it becomes permission to do what you already know inside. But over the years, people have told you no. For instance, when I was a child, I used to say I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I love to make people laugh.
Mm.
And then, you know what the people around me said? You can't do that.
Mm.
What I really wanted to do was be behind a microphone and inspire people. That's
Mm.
really was the message. I read my chart and I went, I knew it. I knew it. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing here today, because I know
Exactly.
it's what I'm meant to do. And so often we're disconnected from us. And
Mm.
it's born from watching other people and realizing that, like, your husband's not wrong or bad, your children are not wrong or bad. You're not doing what you want to do from whatever
Mm.
it may be, whether it be picking up a paintbrush and painting or spending more time in nature. And so that astrology invites us to come back home. And sometimes that can be the impetus towards the change,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't dictate to you which one is going to funnel into another, right? But it's all there for you. Right now, as much as I can find our world to be a little chaotic and a little toxic and sort of disconnecting us from ourselves, it
Mm-hmm.
also allows you and I to have this really beautiful conversation from across the world, right?
Yeah.
And so our world is very beautiful if we focus on that. I mean, even
Yeah.
yesterday in the car, I didn't want to listen to regular music. I want to listen to things that uplift me. And so I
Mm.
listen to spiritual music because that's what I need in that moment. And I don't know what you need, but if you don't connect, you don't either. And you're just guessing.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
that becomes the
Yeah.
conflict within. It's because we're not doing for us first. And so
Yeah.
you can heal, you can change, you can become the creator of your life. And it just takes that one yes to
Mm.
yourself with full embrace and embodiment, which means you're not showing up with your ego. Like, well, this
Mm.
might work. This might not work. And I think that's why talk therapy doesn't always work because we're
Mm.
already in our ego that, like, I'm doing this, but I don't really want to do it. And so you're not going to because we have to be on board.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree. And I think with talk therapy, you also mostly stay in the mind and you're not going really in the body. I have never noticed that going into the body and really start feeling yourself, feeling what's going on over there, feeling where is the heaviness, where are the stored emotions, and all these kind of things. So, yeah, I think, and I want to talk a little bit about that because that's kind of my focus over the last few weeks. It's very related to everything you explained is very related to the nervous system and nervous system regulation, which is one of the things that you do with breathwork, that you do with meditation, that you do with different kind of modalities. So you bring yourself in a state of, I would not say total relaxation, but I would say like, yeah, relaxation as much as you can to calm down that nervous system, because the nervous system is really that thing in your body that is created that causes a lot of tension, that is gonna put you in danger modes, that's trying to protect you. And it's really in the center of this whole healing, in my opinion, in a certain kind of way. And I have the feeling that there's not so much talk around that specifically. So maybe that's something that you can explain a little bit more, like how important is that and how important is it to know more about that?
Yeah, and I love this question so much because you're right. It's not talked about. And cold is so helpful for us. Temperature is so helpful for us because what happens is our nervous system becomes engaged. But here's the thing, I posted a video probably over the summer. I was up on top of a vista and I was noticing the city beneath. And so there's all these cars going, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I have
Mm-hmm.
this perspective and I'm looking down. Well, if one car, let's say, broke down or got into an accident, well, you see this event where it trickles behind every car.
Mm-hmm.
That's our nervous system. And that last car goes, what the heck is happening? I don't know what's happening. We're just stopped.
Yeah.
That's your nervous system. Something happened, but you don't know when it happened. It could have been in the morning when your partner left that dirty dish and that started that wheel of I'm disrespected. And then,
Mm-hmm.
your boss comes in and they didn't read your email or whatever it is. And so now you're so amped up. And then your child comes home and now you're reacting towards your child, but the child didn't do anything, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
really.
Yeah.
Your nervous system has been engaged all day until it just goes like a tea kettle.
It's getting charged actually, right?
That's right. And so what happens when our nervous system is engaged and we're in the ego, we're looking for the evidence that it is true
Mm.
because we haven't had that pause. We haven't been inside of our body to say, okay, something's off. My
Mm.
nervous system is engaged. And if we can recognize when our nervous system is engaged, we have all the power because now we
Mm.
get to choose what to do next. And
Mm.
so when your nervous system is engaged, breath holds, right, are really powerful because
Mm-hmm.
what happens is when we have to hold our breath, we take our attention out of our mind, which creates
Mm-hmm.
that pause, creates that
Mm.
stillness. And then our body goes, well, what's happening? Anything that is a controlled stress is very helpful to change our nervous system response. And so controlled stresses could be, if you're just walking, you just hold your breath just a little and try to take 5 steps. as long as, you're healthy enough to do so, try to take 10
Yeah.
steps the next time, and you're going to notice that your nervous system will calm down because you're
Yeah.
focusing on your breath. And when we tax our bodies are very smart, and they go, "Oh, something's wrong here." Or so now we focus on creating, that synergy, because our body always wants to be in harmony. And
Mm.
so during the retreat, the women said, there was somebody walking around barefoot outside in the snow. I said, "Do you want to do it?" And they were like, "What? Come on, let's try it." And when you step outside on that cold snow with your bare feet, your body goes, "Ooh, this is weird. This is uncomfortable." And so now it's working really hard to fix that. And so you have that stillness inside because your ego
Yeah.
is not there. And so,
Mm.
like, I have a shiatsu mat. It's little tiny little therapeutic needles. Laying on something like that, your body now has to work to be comfortable again. And that takes our attention out of our mind. So you don't always have to know the impetus towards why you're feeling this way. You just have to
Hmm.
recognize it and then say, "Okay, I can fix this." Even just a bucket, like cold, people don't really like cold, I've found. But having ice water and just dipping your face in it can have the same reaction as a cold plunge.
But
Movement.
yeah, ice baths are popular.
Yes, they are. Movement can also be a way to take your attention out of your mind. Heat, right? Now, again, this is what I say. Between cold and heat, right? So you're in the car, your car breaks down, you don't have a jacket. That's not a controlled stress. You were not
Mm.
ready for that, right? But if you intentionally say, "I'm going to go outside without a jacket just for 5 minutes and allow that cold to touch my face," your nervous system will calm down because you're
Yeah.
telling it it's safe to do so, right?
Hmm.
Versus heat, right? It's 90 degrees and you're trying to sleep in the middle of the night and your air conditioner broke is a much different experience than you intentionally going out into the heat to go for a walk to change your nervous system.
Totally.
And so there are ways with which we can do that, even fruit. Fruit can be a way to calm your nervous system down because fruit is so nourishing to our mind, our body, and our soul. It's created by nature, and it has
Yeah.
those delicious sugars that we need in order to
Hmm.
thrive. And
Hmm.
so there are ways, very tangible ways, that we can create that stillness inside and then make a decision or a choice. But when we are reacting from our nervous system, we're reacting from our ego, and therefore we're deciding from our ego. When we feel bad, we might turn to alcohol. We might turn to drugs. We might turn to fast food that doesn't nourish our body because we're disconnected, and it further
Hmm.
detaches us. Scrolling, right? Just shamelessly scrolling on your phone. You're not connecting with yourself. Why?
Hmm.
And all these little stressors are coming in. And
Yeah.
so to know when your nervous system is reacting, right? And usually it's not here. Usually, if we try to focus on it, when it just gets about here, when you're like, "Okay, I was calm and now I'm not. What's going on? Let me pause."
Hmm.
But we have to create that space in order to do so. Meditation can really be beneficial, and I was hosting the retreat and I was guiding them through, some energy healing and some tapping practices. And at the end of that, I had them do a meditation. Most of them came up to me and had the most powerful meditation. And it
Hmm.
wasn't my meditation per se. I mean, yes, I curated it with love and right, but it was
Hmm.
because they were so still inside that it allowed them to connect deeper with their higher self, with that intuition, with their third eye or their chakras, because they were
Yeah.
still inside. And a lot of them hadn't experienced meditation in that way, how powerful it truly
Yeah.
can be. Because when we approach meditation or journaling from a heightened nervous system, if we don't recognize it and honor it first, it will influence whatever healing modality we're trying to proceed with.
Yeah. True. Is that a practice then, like calming down the nervous system in general with
I think,
everything?
yeah, I think that
Yeah.
calming down the nervous system and checking in with yourself and making sure that it is coming from a place of stillness is the most helpful to any healing modality that you may enter. Walking can be a healing modality. We can do
Hmm.
walking unconsciously. We're going to put in our earbuds. We're not going to look up. We're not going to look at nature. That's a different experience than saying,
Mm.
"I'm going to go for a walk because I want the sun on my face." I
Yeah.
want to hear the birds. I want to feel the wind. All of
Mm.
nature can help us calm our nervous system if we are open to receiving it. And when our
Yeah.
nervous system is engaged, we aren't always open to receive.
Mm.
And so, how do we become the receiver of that, of nature's
Mm.
beauty? You know, and we have it all within. But again, sometimes we have to know where our nervous system is at to know how to bring it down
Mm.
and then
Yeah.
proceed.
Yeah. 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 These are very powerful techniques actually to bring that nervous system down. I'm totally agree with that. But also, I think it really depends what that nervous system has already been through over the years in the past when you were never conscious about it. I know from experience that based on yeah traumas that you had or all kinds of events that it's possible that your nervous system can be always charged and never be in a kind of relaxed state, or even when you try to do it it's not possible because it never used to be in that state.
You know,
Y-
and
you
to that,
understand?
I do. And to
Yeah.
that point, you're so right. Because a lot of us, when I talk about this, there's, well, what does that even mean? I don't know what stillness means. I don't know what that means. And
Yeah, we
so,
never learned it.
right. And so I will say, explore the cold just a
Mhm.
little bit. And the reason is because it's really uncomfortable. And
Mm.
after that, you will start to recognize what a calm nervous system is, but you have to pay attention to it.
Mm.
Put your face in an ice bath just for as long as you can take it. Might only be 10 seconds. Don't worry. It's okay. And then just pause and watch how this feeling of stillness and joy will come over you.
Mm.
As long as you're comfortable in the cold, meaning if you're already resisting it, it's not going to help. You have to be
Mm.
able to look at this ice and say, okay, I'm ready, and consciously say, this is going to calm my nervous system. Because if we're trying to come from the ego and no, that's uncomfortable and that's not going to work, it's not. You've already made your mind
Mm.
up.
Yeah.
But if we can be open for a minute, and if you're healthy enough to do some breath holds, those are two of the ways that I find can be the quickest to show you that stillness that you can have throughout your life.
Mm.
Or tapping, even tapping. EFT tapping can help you bring down your nervous system. And you can
Yeah.
Google EFT tapping. What I do is thought field therapy, which is a little different, but it has the same effect in that moment of calming you down. And so
Yeah.
explore one, two, or three of these so that you start to know, oh, that's what that feels like. That's what they're talking about. And
Mm.
then you can expand. But you have to be
Mm.
open to that very first experience if it is your first experience.
Yeah. 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 Tapping. That's another modality, another technique. Super
Mm.
powerful. Also something, yeah, you have to do it consistently, for a certain amount of time to get really the benefits out of that. But that's me, all these kind of things. Yeah. Amazing. We talked about a lot of things, and I feel that we can go on and on because there's so many to say about that and so many experiences that we can share and everything. But maybe there's something that we haven't discussed or we haven't talked about that is for you something that you wanted to share.
Sure. And two things are coming up for me right now. Another way to calm your nervous system is nature. And the simple act of going outside with bare feet can help you do that, can help you. Nature will take from you without asking, without
Hmm.
receiving anything in return. And so standing in the grass or in the dirt, can really help bring your nervous system down. The same as hugging a tree. I mean, it sounds so
Mm.
silly, but if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. Because a tree, and you can just ask, take this from me, and the tree will lovingly
Yeah.
accept. And so, again, I've just offered just a couple ways for you to learn what that stillness feels like inside. And I think another thing too, really now, is learning more about yourself, whether that be through astrology, whether that be through books. But I really invite you to focus on who the author of the book is and what it is that they're expressing, because if they haven't actually done the work, it might not be the best book to read. Read the
That's a good
books
one.
from people who know what they are talking about. I don't know
Mm.
what it's like to be a man. So if I wrote a book about being a man, I hope you
Mm.
wouldn't read it. right? Right? And so often,
Living with a man.
right, right, that would be a different, but
Should
so
be a different, yeah.
yeah, we have to, like I said, Michael Singer, Thich Nhat Hanh, they're coming from what they know.
Mm,
Those are the books to read. Come from people who know what they are talking about because they've lived
mm,
it, they've journeyed through it, right? And that's why these conversations are so important. And
mm,
so learn about yourself, whether that be through astrology, whether that be through some time in nature and some stillness. And guess what? It's probably a lot more than what I'm saying. It's, if I were to show you my, prescription pad for the day, it's meditation, it's journaling, it's crystals in my pocket, it's the sunlight on my face, it's nourishing food,
mm.
it's having beautiful conversations, you know? And it's a consistent momentum forward to feel that
Yeah.
love inside.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful set. Yeah. Really, thank you for sharing all these valuable insights. I believe that people that want to know more about it, they can find a lot on your social media channels and your website. We will put them down in the comments for sure so that people can have a look at that. Is there anything you want to say? Because I know you were also working on writing a book, being co-author of a book. Is there something you want to say about that or something else maybe that's something that comes up?
Sure, first when it going to the book, it really is, came, the chapter that I wrote really came from my heart. And it's we have these moments in our life where they can be these pinnacle, pivotal aha moments that really help to shift the paradigm. And it just is a matter of being open to receiving. I think so much we just want to give to the world without openly receiving. And we have to close that circuit. I often think
Hmm.
about the infinity symbol, right? If we take the number 8, it has two circles that match. And so if we're only in the giving, then we can't equitably receive. Excuse me. And so really we need to be able to receive from life too. And I think the other message that's really powerfully coming through is you are enough and you have it all within if you're quiet enough to listen.
Yeah. All right. That's a powerful one to close this episode for sure. Thank you very much, Tiffany, for being here, for your time, for sharing this valuable information. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the audience will do it as well or enjoyed it as well. And I wish you to go on much more other places because you really have a powerful story and a message to share. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for all that you do as well, because we need more leaders, to have these platforms for us to share these messages. So thank you so much.